Biker gang attacked a former army dog handler, but they didn't know what they were up against. The rumble of Harley engines echoed through the sleepy desert town of Mesa Ridge, breaking the late afternoon stillness. The Iron Fangs biker gang rolled in like a dust storm, loud, reckless, and reeking of trouble. At the edge of town, tucked behind a rusted fence, stood a modest repair shop. It was owned by Jack "Doc" Rollins, a quiet man with a limp, a beard flecked with gray, and eyes that missed nothing. Most folks knew little about him, only that he lived alone with his dog, a German shepherd named Ghost. What they didn't know was that Jack was a former Army K-9 handler who'd seen more combat than most people read about in thrillers. The Iron Fangs had been tearing across counties, extorting small businesses, and roughing up anyone who stood in their way. When they showed up at Jack's garage, demanding protection money, he calmly declined. "You sure you want to say no to us, old man?" sneered Ripper, the gang's leader, his arms covered in jailhouse ink and arrogance. Jack wiped his hands with a rag, tossed it on the workbench, and gave a small, cold smile. "Pretty sure." Ripper stepped forward, but Ghost growled, a low, vibrating sound that made the gang pause. "That much gonna stop us?" One of them laughed. Jack's smile widened. "He's not just a dog. He's trained. And he's not alone." Before the bikers could react, Ghost lunged, not in mindless rage, but with the precision of years of battlefield training. He took down the nearest thug like a linebacker, snapping his jaws around the man's arm and dragging him into the dirt. In the chaos, Jack moved. His limp vanished the moment adrenaline kicked in. He grabbed a wrench, dodged a punch, and countered with military efficiency. One biker dropped, then another. Jack wasn't fighting to win, he was fighting to finish. Suddenly, smoke grenades rolled out from behind the shop. The yard filled with thick, choking clouds. More barking, two shapes emerged, a pair of retired military dogs Jack had quietly adopted. The gang was overwhelmed, their yells turning to panic as teeth, fists, and smoke disoriented them. When the dust settled, half the gang was groaning on the ground, and the other half was running for their bikes, chased by snarling fury and a man who clearly knew how to command it. Sheriff Dalton arrived just in time to see Ripper crawling out from under a pile of tires, bloodied and bruised. "What the hell happened here?" the sheriff asked. Jack shrugged. They didn't know what they were up against. Ghost sat beside him, tail wagging, tongue out, as if nothing had happened. From that day on, no one messed with Jack Rollins. And the Iron Fangs? They never came near Mesa Ridge again. The sheriff helped haul the remaining Iron Fangs into the back of his cruiser. "You really did a number on them, Jack," he muttered, eyeing the busted noses and bloodied knuckles with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. Jack didn't respond. He simply walked back toward the garage, Ghost and the two other dogs, Ranger and Bella, flanking him like a shadow unit. Inside the garage, Jack sat on the metal stool by his workbench and opened a small, battered box. Inside were his old army dog tags, a photo of his unit in Afghanistan, and a patch that read, 75th Military Working Dog Unit. No man left behind. He hadn't wanted trouble. He came to Mesa Ridge to get away from it. But trouble, it seemed, still remembered his name. 3 days later, Jack's quiet was shattered again, but this time by a different sound. Boom. The front window of his garage exploded inward. A Molotov cocktail burst into flame, catching the edge of a tarp. Smoke billowed, dogs barking furiously as Jack rolled into action. He grabbed the fire extinguisher, doused the flames, and yanked the security footage. His jaw tightened as he watched grainy footage of two Iron Fangs, ones who'd escaped arrest, sneaking up in the dead of night. They hadn't learned. Or worse, someone else had stepped in. He knew how these gangs worked. There were always lieutenants in the shadows, smarter, meaner, and patient. Ripper had just been the front. Now the real boss was coming. Later that night, Jack drove his old Jeep deep into the desert, Ghost in the passenger seat, wind whipping through the open frame. He stopped near an old, crumbling airstrip and waited. A faint whistle echoed. From behind a dune, a figure emerged, lean, dark-skinned, with a scar along his jaw. It was Samira Hawk Delaney, former Delta operator and Jack's wartime comrade. "You called," she said, tossing a pack of MREs at his chest. "I thought you wanted to stay out of it." "I did, but they brought it to my doorstep." "And you want to end it?" "I want to warn them, then end it if I have to." Hawk smiled. "Let me guess, you still have that old satellite comms kit in the garage?" Jack nodded. "Still works. Then let's call on the others." Back in town, the Iron Fangs regrouped in a dusty warehouse outside Mesa Ridge. A man known only as Vice stood at the center, cold, calculating, a former mercenary turned crime boss. So he's ex-military, Vice said, watching a video of Jack and his dogs taking down the gang. So what? We're bringing 20 ARs, grenades, body armor. He turned to his lieutenant. Burn him out. By dawn, Jack's garage was no longer just a repair shop. It was a fortress. Hawk had stayed the night, sleeping with one eye open, her sidearm always within reach. Jack had been up since 4 a.m., converting junkyard scraps into traps, caltrops, pressure-triggered paint can bombs, makeshift spike strips. His military brain was in full gear. No more running. This was war. Ghost, Bella, and Ranger moved with precision, trained and alert. Hawk brought out her drone and scoped the surrounding desert. They're staging 5 miles out, she said, watching the grainy live feed. Looks like 20 men, armed to the teeth. Trucks, bikes, and a damn minigun rigged to a flatbed. Jack cracked his knuckles. Time to make them regret waking up today. Meanwhile, at the Mesa Ridge diner, the townsfolk had caught wind that something was coming. Sheriff Dalton pulled aside Mayor Reynolds. We got 2 choices, he said. Evacuate or stand with Rollins. Reynolds looked at him. That man saved this town once already. If we run, we'll be running forever. Dalton nodded and called in every deputy, reserve officer, and a few stubborn ranchers who wouldn't back down from a fight if it stared them in the face. The town wasn't defenseless anymore. It had a war dog handler, a Delta operator, and a community ready to make a stand. Dusk, the calm before the storm, the Iron Fangs rolled in under the fading sun, engines snarling like a pack of wolves. Their bikes spread out along the main road, kicking up dust. Vice stood atop the flatbed truck, watching through binoculars. Looks quiet, he said. Too quiet, muttered one of his men. They approached Jack's garage cautiously. Then a boom exploded from the ground. One of their front bikes flipped in the air, caught in a hidden ditch lined with rebar and oil. The garage lights flickered on. Out stepped Jack, holding an old M4 carbine, wearing desert camo pants and a tactical vest. Behind him were Hawk, Sheriff Dalton, and a line of townsfolk with deer rifles, shotguns, and determination. You had your chance, Jack called out. Vice laughed. This your army, old man? No, Jack said. He clicked a remote. Spotlights flared. Sirens wailed. And the dogs charged. Ghost and Ranger darted through smoke canisters, flanking the enemy. Bella stayed with Jack, watching his 6. Hawk's drone buzzed overhead, marking targets. Jack and Hawk moved like ghosts, hitting tires, fuel tanks, and weak points. The gang fired wildly, but the chaos had been planned down to the last second. From rooftops, the townsfolk rain lead. One rancher took out the minigun mount with a scope shot that set off a chain reaction. Flames and shrapnel lit the night sky. Vice, bloodied and cornered, tried to flee on foot, but found Ghost in his path. The dog lunged, pinning him until Jack walked up slowly, rifle lowered. You wanted a war, Jack said. You just lost one. Aftermath. By morning, the dust had settled. Emergency services arrived to haul away the wounded and arrested. The Iron Fangs were shattered. What was left of them was being shipped to federal custody. Jack stood outside the garage, shirt torn, a bandage on his arm, sipping coffee. Hawk walked up beside him. So, you gonna open up that garage again? Eventually, Jack said, petting Ghost's head. But first, I think I need a bigger fence. The town was safe for now. But the legend of the garage at Mesa Ridge had just begun.